CDC has been operating.
Great. So I think everybody has introduced themselves. Okay. I was hoping Malawi would be online and Angola and everybody else anyway. So I see that only 3 of the member states are represented. South Africa, 4, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Namibia, and Zambia. So welcome everybody to the new year. And I know we had agreed that we would meet on the 16th of January as the first meeting, but we have an outbreak ongoing that's affecting the region, and we thought it's important that we discuss the way forward. So the outbreak of contention right now is a circulating vaccine-derived poliovirus type 2, which has affected Angola mostly, Mozambique, DRC also on the high side, and now most recently Zambia and Malawi. And so, of course, as public health practitioners, we are concerned because circulating VDPVs are outbreak-causing polioviruses. And we all know that we have done a switch from the trivalent polio vaccine, oral polio vaccine, to the bivalent oral polio vaccine in all our member states. And the bivalent OPV has no type 2 immunization against type 2. So meaning, I think the switch for all, if not all, if for most, if not all of us in the region was in 2016. So all those children born after 2016 have no immunity to type 2. And so if you notice, the type 2 outbreak in most of the places is in the younger generation. So it is definitely a disease of public health concern, even when we've made such big milestones in eradicating type 1 and type 2 in Africa, the wild type. So I was hoping that the countries that are affected would speak about their situations, but unfortunately the only country that is affected right now is Zambia. So maybe I'll give a brief. What has happened in Zambia? In July, we had a case up north in a province called Luapula, which borders extensively with Congo DRC. The case in question, the index case, was a child who is half Zambian and half Congolese, and so treks between the 2 countries. The mother is Zambian, the father is Congolese. And in fact, the case was found in, the case was found in, was first investigated in DRC, notified to Zambia to WHO. So when we did a risk assessment in the area on the Zambian side, we found 2 other children shedding, although asymptomatic, but shedding the virus. Now, more recently, we've had another 2 situations on the western and northwestern side of Zambia, bordering Angola. So one case in Karabo district, which is in Western Province, was associated with Angola. In fact, the child came from Angola to visit in Zambia. And from the investigations, it's come out that the case was also investigated earlier on in Angola. In Northwestern Province, Chavuma, again, neighboring Angola, we have the case, a Zambian child who was visited by a family from Angola where the outbreak is ongoing. So looking at this situation, and the report that has come from Malawi also indicates a connection with Mozambique, where they have also been having outbreaks of CVTP2. So looking at that, we thought it's important that we start to talk about this situation and map the way forward, because I think the two critical ways of dealing with this is active surveillance on all sides, or both sides of the border points, but also increased cross-border collaboration in the follow-ups of these patients or these cases, but also maybe even in the response methods. So for example, for Zambia, we know that on the Angolan side, they had already done their 0-dose vaccination. We hadn't done it, and we're going to do it now, but we're trying to see how we can work and ensure that we do them at the same time, because we don't want to put in, introduce in the vaccine when the other side is not ready. So we have to work together. So that is the perspective of the situation of the circulating vaccine-derived poliovirus. I'll ask first for our seniors in the HQ to make some comments, and then the member states can make some comments or ask questions. Dr. Idowu, would you like to make a comment? Dr. Girard, would you like to make a comment?
It's not a comment. Maybe I would like the colleagues in the region to have a say before us to add anything. Now, they have experience with the polio. Can we listen to them first? Over.
Hello?
Yes,
Hello.
Steph?
Hello, Ahmed. I just want, not really a comment, but just to summarize the situation. And we get some information about, we are talking about a number of countries that this type of outbreak. What I would like to listen to is the current situation for the number of cases in each country, and what has happened in each country. Have it announced it as an outbreak? Any activities? What is needed in there? And how can we support that? Thank you.
Okay, so for Zambia, what has happened is, of course, we've done the risk assessments in the areas where the cases were. So in Luapula province, the one that is bordering DRC, we have done 2 rounds of vaccine. The first round, round 0, was given to children under 5 in the areas in close proximity to where the index case was. So that was 4 districts. And then in round 1, we extended further to the next areas of risk. So the borders bordering the high risk areas and close proximity or bordering the DRC, which came to about 10 districts. And those are the districts that are also targeted for round 3. I mean round 2, which is the 3rd round in actual fact, but yes, round 2. So in the northwestern and western provinces, the areas that are, we're going to start with 5 districts, which are neighboring the area called the area Angola. I've forgotten the name of the area in Angola where the outbreak is. So those 5 districts directly connected or bordered to that area are the ones that will have round 0. Then we'll expand to other districts which are also in close proximity and at high risk in round 1 and round 2. So in terms of the needs, of course, resources are always, I mean, these are not planned for. Polio Remember in Zambia, the last polio case that we had, the last indigenous polio case in Zambia was in 1995. And then we had an importation in 2002. So we you know, it's not something we even anticipated. So of course, resources are key in supporting the vaccinations, and of course, community engagement and active surveillance. But what we're also trying to push is to try and allot or get more resources to quickly bring forward the vaccination, the nationwide vaccination with the inactivated polio vaccine. The inactivated polio vaccine, remember, has all the serotypes. So we're hoping that if we do that and have a good coverage, we should be able to contain the situation. That's for Zambia. I don't know, my colleague is here from surveillance. Maybe she can also add on a few more things.
So excuse me, just quickly before you go to the second comment, what is the total number of cases in Zambia?
The number of confirmed cases. So we have the one that was the first case in Chiengi. Then we had one that was from Chavuma that was recently identified, which is where the response will be held in, I think that should be next week. So 2 cases as of now. There's the third one from yesterday.
Yes, there's a third one. There's a third one from yesterday.
In Senga Hills.
So I think we just sent samples to NICD for this last one. But there was another one which was in Kalawo, and the patient has since gone back to Angola because that's where they originally came from. Then remember, I also mentioned that in Chavuma, in Chiengi, when we did the risk assessment, we were able to find among children, 2 children in good condition, asymptomatic, also shedding the circulating poliovirus. In the other 2 areas, we were advised by WHO that there was, since we had already confirmed it as a circulating poliovirus, there was no need to do community checks and just respond accordingly. So there might be more people asymptomatic but shedding the virus, but because we didn't do the community assessment as advised.
So I had gone on to the Global Polio Eradication Initiative website yesterday, or I think it was on Tuesday, and did a quick synopsis of the cases that were reported through that website in 2019. And just briefly for you guys on the call, for the countries that reported cases last year, it appears that Angola reported 82 cases, Benin reported 6, Central African Republic reported 16, Chad reported 2 cases, DRC reported 61 cases, Ethiopia 5, Ghana 11, Niger 1 case, Nigeria 18, Somalia 3, Togo 4, and Zambia 1. So the only information that I was missing was this additional case that you guys are talking about from Zambia, and then it also sounds like the cases from Malawi, but I don't know how many cases have been reported from Malawi. So maybe that would be helpful to share. And also, just so you guys all know, these are all vaccine-derived type 2.
Yes, all of them are vaccine-derived polio type 2. And Malawi so far have only recorded 1 confirmed case, which is just within last week.
Doctor?
Malawi have confirmed 1.
NRCD.
Oh, hi.
Yeah. Afternoon. Those numbers, thanks, Steph, but they are underreported. We still have samples here from last year that are still in process. So that we still have quite a few DRC samples as well as Angola samples. So there will be higher numbers as that information becomes available.
Perhaps I can also just ask you, you said that in terms of Zambia, you are going to bring forward a nationwide campaign with IPV. Can I ask what is your routine situation with IPV? And if we could perhaps hear about what is the routine situation regarding IPV in the other member states, as IPV is really going to be our only holding protection against spread of this virus, other than the campaigns, the individual response campaigns to each outbreak.
Okay, so for the IPV, I think the biggest issue is, I think of note is that Zambia has a population of children which is naive to the type 2 vaccine, to the type 2 virus. So we have a group of children that missed the vaccination when we switched from using the trivalent to using the BOPV. So in between the time when we stopped using the TOPV to start using the BOPV, there was a bit of time, I think about a year, which in that time, children did not receive vaccination against type 2. So I think what Dr. Mazianko was trying to say was that we need to catch up on those children that did not receive type 2 vaccine, type 2 virus, protection against the type 2.
So I'm still a little bit confused. Let me just clarify. So is IPV part of the routine EPR schedule?
Yes,
Yes, it is.
As of 2018, it is.
From 2018?
From 2018, it was introduced.
Okay. And do we know about the other countries?
No, we're not sure about the other countries, but we could find out. I think once we're done with the ECHO today, we will send out a note requesting for that kind of information.
Because really, if I have to just summarize my thinking on this, is that, it's such a complex situation. WHO will guide response, around each of these outbreaks, and there might be some limited use of monovalent OPV2 in risk there is a case. But each time we use the monovalent OPV2, of course, we have a risk of seeding a new problem and of starting a new problem. And I think what we need to do urgently is assess our IPV vaccine coverage and stock and availability, and really start focusing and prioritizing with our national governments around advocacy on IPV coverage. Because the IPV coverage is what's going to prevent further emergencies in new areas and in new countries.
Yeah. I think so. Agreed. That's a very valid point, and that's the discussion Zambia is having, and that is why we have chosen, because we were supposed to do a catch-up nationwide campaign in June, but we've chosen to push it, to bring it forward to hopefully by February, so that we can do that catch-up. We had to respond to the immediate situation with the monovalent, even though we knew that we risk introducing further infections, but we didn't have enough stock to do a nationwide campaign. So hopefully, if we get our resources, I know that our government has put in what its obligation to Gavi. That's what we were told yesterday in a meeting, that they've put in their obligation. So we're hoping that by February, we would have managed to set up for the IPV nationwide catch-up.
Thank you. I would, if we have a further call on this matter, I think that must be a topic for discussion for each country with outbreaks.
Thank you so much, Melinda. We will take note of that. Any other comments from elsewhere? I can see the Zimbabweans conferring with each other there. Any comments? Because you are the next victims.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much from Zimbabwe, Dr. Piri here. Zimbabwe is not yet reported anything, but I'm seeing as it's happening in Zambia, we share the border with Zambia. So I think it's, and we also have a lot of movement of people from Malawi, Mozambique. So I think cross-border collaboration that you mentioned earlier when it's very important. I think I have some colleagues here from our ministry. Our EPI manager might want to comment, but I think the issue of cross-border collaboration is very, very key. And the awareness as well to all healthy workers to know to really do the screening and send samples if any reported are reported. Yeah.
Thank you, colleagues. This monovalent OPV2 that we are using for response, do we have an alternative? I'm getting scared now.
So the only alternative to that is the IPV. That's the only alternative, because the OPV that we have routinely has no type 2 in it. And that's why we're saying when we switched from the trivalent, which had all the 3 serotypes, protection against all the 3 serotypes, to bivalent, we have that group of children who have no immunity because they were not exposed to the trivalent OPV. And they may have not been able to have access to the IPV. So for example, in Zambia, we give IPV1 at age 3 months, yeah? Yeah.
14 weeks. Yeah. No, maybe my question is, are we using IPV to respond to the outbreak, or are we still using OPV2?
We're using the monovalent OPV2 to respond to the outbreak.
This is where my challenge is to say, are we going to interrupt this problem now if we continue using monovalent OPV2, which we are trying to fight?
Yeah, it's a difficult situation. We know that the cost of the IPV is much higher, and so we know that, and we also know that that would be the best response to give. And so, while, for example, for Zambia, while we're trying to put up resources to make sure that we get enough IPV to secure the immunity of the children, we couldn't just sit and wait until we have those resources. So that's why instead of vaccinating everybody with the monovalent, we've only vaccinated strategically those at highest risk. So the rest of the country is not getting the MOPV. It's just those who are at the highest risk while we secure the IPV, which we hope and I think will happen by February.
Okay.
Thank you.
I know you're not happy, but that's the reality of the matter.
A problem. By solving another problem. That's how I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe our parents in HQ can give some guidance or can make some comments.
Hey everyone, Ahmed and I were just kind of chatting, and it might be helpful to try to get information from all of the countries that are currently experiencing cases. And so we were thinking about a few key things that would be helpful to maybe understand the situation a bit better. And so if there's a way that we can understand what is the vaccine that's currently being used by each country, both for routine and for the emergency response, and if anybody's using a vaccine schedule that's differing from the WHO guidelines of what that vaccine schedule looks like. A second thing that would be helpful would be to note the number, if you can list out the number of cases by Epi week for the last 3 months. And maybe this is a question to everybody, what are we currently perceiving as the current risk level across the region? And, are there thoughts about response and like what's currently being done, if it's adequate, or what, you all think need to be done? I think would be helpful to understand. Over.
Thank you, Steph. I think that's very important information. So we will write to the Office of the RCC Coordinator to the focal points in the 5 countries affected so far in our region to give us this important information, which we'll share with everybody on the platform, so that even those who are not yet affected can utilize this information for preparedness. Any other comments?
Okay. Sorry. When do we start the all IPV only, so that we forget about all these all these other oral OPVs?
So we're not forgetting about we're not forgetting about all the OPVs. Remember that we're using the vaccines that we're using. Let's say, for instance, in Zambia, we're using the BOPV, which protects our children against type 1 and type 3. But in the BOPV, we do not have protection against type 2. So the IPV was intentionally introduced so that it protects our children against the type 2 virus. So when we are talking about increasing the coverages, we're talking about increasing coverage against the type 2, which is the IPV, and that's the one that most of the countries are being affected with in the circulating vaccine, right?
Maybe I wasn't clear with my question. I am saying, are we going to have a situation where we are going to have maybe like IPV1, IPV2, IPV3, and maybe forget about using oral OPV? That's where I'm coming from.
So I think all of this is country based, and it's all about resources, because I know that in the developed world, for instance, OPV is not being used. They've since completely moved to the IPV. But in our scenario, it's all about, I think, mostly about resources. And I think most countries have a plan. It was supposed to be a transition, actually. We're not supposed to stick to the OPV forever. It was supposed to be transitioning. But most countries have not done that because, first of all, the IPV coverage is on the low side, also because of inadequate vaccines. But and also maybe just the systems how they are. We have to hear on individual country basis. So, but maybe those are the things.
Perhaps if I can.
Sorry.
It's NRCD. If I could make a comment when you're ready.
Yes, please. So when
it's just on that.
Yeah, you may go ahead.
Sorry, thank you. On that comment of when we will stop with the BOPV, it will need to be an African coordinated or a global coordinated stop, because if countries individually stop, then they will see the same problem of VDPV emergence with type 1 and type 3 that we are seeing now after the switch from TOPV to BOPV. So we are awaiting guidance for a global stopping of the bivalent OPV, which by WHO global documents is set for 1 year after the last wild type 1 case in Pakistan or Afghanistan. However, I'm not sure if that guideline will be revised or not, because that's very concerning. Because BOPV was supposed to be stopped 1 year after the last polio case. If we stop 1 year after the last wild type case and we are still having a problem of circulating VDPVs, then there's going to be a difficult issue, and we will find ourselves in the same position with type 1 or 3 that we find ourselves now in with type 2. So we come back to the point that really our only protection in this dangerous time when we stop a particular serotype is our IPV coverage. We must pay attention to the IPV coverage.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So that's so I mean, even as a region, I think we really need to look to it and see how we can push this agenda. But also, I think the cross-border is also key in following up cases, because, for example, for Malawi, the case was originally, I think, has gone back to Mozambique, and they're trying to find or trace, this case. They're not even sure whether they've gone back to Mozambique and so on and so forth. So there's need for countries to talk to each other. We for instance, the first case we had was investigated in DRC because the child's father lives in DRC, but we only got to get the information 2-3 months later through WHO. The one in Western Province, Callao, the patient was actually investigated in Angola before they crossed over to Zambia, but we didn't know that. And so also investigated here in Zambia when the child presented at a health facility. So I think there's it's really, really important that as member states, we talk to each other as neighbors. Yes, Dr. Perry. Dr. Perry, do you have your hand up?
No, I didn't raise my hand, sorry.
Okay.
Oh. It's okay.
Okay, any comments? Ido, would you like to make some comments on behalf of HQ?
Thank you very much, Madam Masayanga. I think probably we can have details from the other member states from Southern RCC, that will be fine, so that we know the total number of cases we are dealing with and how we can support, like Dr. Ahmed Hacks from Africa CDC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So are there any comments? So this was an impromptu meeting to just see how we could deal with the current outbreak, which is making everybody concerned. But we will resume. I think once we hear what is happening in the other countries, we may request to have a meeting again next week. But otherwise, we may just communicate online and resume on the 16th. But I see that either Steph or Ahmed has something to say.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we're muted.
I think as indicated at the beginning, we are going to circulate some kind of a very short survey with you so that we can get the essential information needed by Africa CDC in order to do a risk assessment for the current situation, not by country, but as a whole. And Stephanie, you can...
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I'll put together the questions that we have for you all and share it with you. And then we'll try to get a better understanding too of what our partners are doing in the region as well. And then we can, if we have another call next week, we can hopefully convene and share that information.
Okay, thank you so much. So one of the other, there are two other issues that have also affected the region. There's anthrax. So Zambia has reported some cases of anthrax among the animals and some human beings in Western Province. But we know that Zimbabwe also has some cases of anthrax. Would you like to say something about the anthrax situation in Zimbabwe?
Okay. So I'll introduce to you our surveillance manager. We'll talk on that.
Okay, good afternoon, colleagues. I think in Zimbabwe, last week, we had 34 cases, suspected cases of anthrax, and there are about 3 provinces that are reported the cases. We had Masvingo province, which is the southern part of Zimbabwe, and also the Midlands province and Manicaland provinces. Those 3 provinces did report suspected cases of anthrax. That is last week.
Okay, thank you very much. So we would request if you could share a situation report with us, the RCC, because it's important that we have this information and we see how other countries may be affected and how we can help or respond to the situation.
Yeah. So to notice that these are cutaneous cases of anthrax. You are aware that Zimbabwe has been reporting cases of anthrax over the years because of the liberation war and stuff like that. But we know very well that when animals die, people tend to butcher the animals, then they consume the meat, instead of reporting to authorities and stuff like that. So some of our responses is awareness, so that people desist from eating these animals that die on their own, their cattle. They seem to think that it's wastage not to consume it or not to sell it. So that's one of the areas that we need to strengthen on the awareness of people not to consume meat from animals that have died from disease. We are worried, of course, the one of the diseases that is affected is called Gutu district in Masvingo province. That's the one that is currently reporting more cases since mid-November. Throughout December, they've been reporting these cases. Over to you.
Just a quick question for you guys regarding the anthrax cases. Have you been able to reach out to the Ministry of Ag to see if are they trying to do any preventative vaccination or response to the animal die-offs to maybe prevent further cases in the human population?
As we speak, of course, most of the time we get information from the veterinary service on the animals that would have died, but already people would have consumed the carcasses of food. But there's a challenge in terms of the vaccine. Usually get it from Botswana, but currently I'm told there is a big challenge in terms of procurement of these vaccines within the department. But we'll give you a full update on the situation report that will circulate. Yes. But thank you very much for that question.
Okay, so for Zambia, we've also had a One Health approach to the response. And the animal people, of course, are busy vaccinating the animals. We've seen a reduction in the incidence rate. We haven't had any new cases among human beings in the last 1 week or so. But yeah, vaccination is the way forward. And of course, community engagement to just sensitize the people about the dangers of eating meat from animals that have died from anthrax. And then Namibia, are you still on? Namibia, is Namibia still on?
Yes, we are here.
So Namibia, before I go to Namibia, Zimbabwe, there's a question. Did you say 34 suspected cases or confirmed cases of anthrax? And are these among the human beings or among the animals?
It's 34. It's 34 suspected cases among the human beings.
Why are we still suspecting? Is it about diagnostic capacity, or what is the reason why we haven't confirmed or the cases?
These are clinically diagnosed cases. We use clinical diagnosis for anthrax among humans. We don't Zimbabwean. We don't take samples for that. On these are cutaneous cases that are presented to the health facilities, and the diagnosis is made clinically by the health worker. Yes. So we could say these are anthrax cases, cutaneous anthrax cases. Yes. So probably the word suspected should go away.
Okay, so I'm getting a lot of whispers here and there, but the idea is that we feel that it would be important for the sake of the records and for the sake of accurate information to have even 1 or 2 persons in the class that tested, to just have that record. That's definitely, I mean, once you see the rest of the cases that are clinically inclined, you're comfortable. That's just a way of advice, but of course we all have different ways of managing and concluding our situations. So Steph, did you want to say anything else about the anthrax, or Melinda?
No questions for me. Just be interested to see the sit rep. Thanks so much.
Okay. So Namibia, I was calling out for you because Namibia, we are aware that you're having some hepatitis E and then foot and mouth disease. Would you like to make some comments? Foot and mouth is for South Africa, so that will come to South Africa. For Namibia, it's hepatitis E.
Yes, we are still battling for hepatitis E. It's ongoing, and it's mainly in Khomas region, where Windhoek is situated in the capital city. But it's also in Erongo region at the coastal area. But we have some sporadic cases in the northern part. But at the moment, the cases are still increasing, although they are not increasing compared to the past months. There are a lot of intervention, stakeholder involvement is really going on, and we also have good support from partners. UNDP, they are really supporting us, and our faculty residents and alumni, they are really working hard, including our surveillance officers. Although we still have some challenges. I'll give to my colleagues to add more.
Yeah, there is a CITREP report available every week. So perhaps if you would like to have it, we are sending this to WHO. So you can receive our CTREP as well.
Okay, so Pume, Yaya will be in touch with you, so that we can just have maybe you okay. Yaya will put the email address. Please send us the CTREP so that we can also see how the situation is uncovering and how we can support.
Great.
So please send all situation reports to Yaya, and you can copy copy me as well. So he's put Yaya has put his email address there, and you can also copy me in the email so that we see the way forward.
That's great. We will do so.
Okay. Any comments from anybody on the situation of hepatitis E? Okay, so maybe to be nice, we'll see, maybe we could also get some experts to come and talk to us about hepatitis E and how countries can manage or deal with these situations. And then South Africa, we want some comment on the foot and mouth ongoing in South Africa. Any comments?
Yeah, so foot and mouth being an animal disease, it really would have been helpful to get earlier notice of this because, as you know, we are from the National Institute of Communicable Diseases. We deal more with human diseases. For foot and mouth, you'd have to get input from the Department of Agriculture, Fishery and Forestries. So the advisable thing to do would be for you to contact the National Department of Health, who could liaise with the Department of Agriculture, Fishery and Forestries, because that really isn't our area, so we can't really give a comment on that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. We've come to the end of our session. We're very grateful to all of you for having made that impromptu response to the request to discuss this. And we hope our colleagues in Angola, Mozambique and Malawi can catch up with us quickly because they are definitely affected by this polio outbreak, which is not only a concern to our region, but actually an international public health concern. Thank you very much and welcome to 2020. We hope this year will yield more fruitful situations among the member states and also as a region.
Thank you, Mazianga. Happy 2020.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye, everyone.